Welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Brad Wakai. That is Tyson Gentry. We got our college football episode today, Tyson. Week 9, we kind of talked about on our last podcast discussing this, our last college football podcast. Is nothing too crazy going on, so we're going to recap what happened in Week 9. But Week 10 is a banger. I mean, we've got big matchups we got to highlight. Of course, we got games that we've circled betting-wise that we want to discuss. And then, of course, the games that we've already bet that we'll go through in Money Makin Time. And also the first college football playoff rankings have come out as well. Obviously subject to change, as this is still very early before any of the championship games, for any of the truly big matchups. But that's still a discussion point. We're going to kind of take you through that. But as always, we're going to start here, the Week 9 Top 25 recap, just to give everybody an idea of what's going on. This took place on Thursday. Utah, without their starting QB, they beat Washington State 21-17 on the road. NC State, without their starting QB, beat Virginia Tech 22-21. And then just an absolute heartbreaker for me. Ohio State goes berserk in the fourth quarter, wins 44-31 over 13th ranked Penn State after Penn State was up at halftime. That was a tough pill to swallow as a Penn State fan. Number 1, Georgia in the AP poll dominated Florida 42-20. Tennessee just steamrolls. Number 19, Kentucky 44-6. Michigan beats their rival Michigan State 29-7. Very, very convincing fashion there. Number 7, TCU continues to roll as they get a 10-point win over West Virginia on the road 41-31. Oregon, shaky start, got it rolling. They beat Cal on the road 42-24. Kansas State just throttled Oklahoma State 48-0 with their backup quarterback Will Howard in an eye-opening victory there. Louisville beats Wake Forest 48-21. Wake Forest had 8 turnovers in the second half. Truly unimaginable. That third quarter was an absolute disaster. USC squeaks by Arizona on the road 45-37. They continue to keep winning. UCLA with the bounce back 38-13 over Stanford at home. Ole Miss beats Texas A&M on the road 31-28. A&M showing a little life late in that game. Notre Dame beating number 16 ranked Syracuse in a blowout 41-24 on the road. Illinois continues their dream season. I mean, 26-9 over Nebraska. UCF upsets Cincinnati at home in the bounce house in a crazy game and a crazy ending 25-21. North Carolina rolls over Pittsburgh 42-24. And South Carolina, breaking into the top 25, loses at home to Missouri. So that's your recap. Like we said, nothing really crazy there. I mean, we can let's touch here. Let's go Ohio State, Penn State as we kind of recap everything here. That's a big game that we'll talk about Tennessee and that game. But listen, Ohio State flipped the switch on Penn State.
I mean, this is what we call seeing it well. This was exactly, I think, how you and I had this game going. Penn State was going to Penn State and played this game really close for a half, and then we were going to talk ourselves into them being able to win coming out of halftime. And then Sean Clifford was going to go full Sean Clifford. And it wasn't necessarily his fault. It's just the fact that Ohio State has an extra gear that they can reach. But the one thing that I am frustrated with seeing the college football playoff committee thing, the top 25 come out today, and it's always fun to overreact to the first one because the first one doesn't matter. How different is Ohio State's resume than TCU's, than Michigan's, and like Georgia beat the number 8 team in the country by 40, and we're rewarding Ohio State beating. What did Penn State come out to in the college?
They're
football?
16th, I believe, 16
right.
or 15.
And they had to step on the gas in the second half to get those guys out of there, and it was impressive. But Ohio State is becoming alarmingly one-sided as far as the way that they play football. The committee wants a good offense and a good defense, and it's starting to look like Ohio State might have an elite unit on one side of the ball and just an okay one on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, they had an elite game by their defensive end. I mean, that's the thing. That was really the game record there. Ohio State had like one premier player who just wrecked the game for them on the defensive side of the football, and that's why they were in the game. That's why they're able to prevail. That offense flipped the switch. I mean, that's what they do, right? When they're just down, they go down and score in a quick strike. Marvin Harrison Jr., Joel Klatt said in the broadcast, he's the best wide receiver in college football. I think it's tough to argue with that. I mean, that dude is just special, flat out.
Well, until next year, then they'll have another sophomore that'll take his spot as best receiver in college football.
Right. That's how it goes, right? But Yeah, I mean, we said it, man. The resume for Ohio State, this is their biggest win to date. This is their first, like, real road test, and they got tested. And, yes, they flipped the switch in the fourth quarter, but they scored 10 in the first quarter, 3 in the second, 3 points in the third quarter. Then everything went right for them in the fourth, and that's how they came away with this victory. There are still questions for me with Ohio State. I still think they're a top-tier team. I still think they deserve to be ranked where they're at, just based on that talent and based on preseason expectations, and they haven't faltered. But like you said, we still need to see a little bit more out of these guys.
I was hoping for a statement, and what I got back wasn't even a strongly worded letter.
Well, a statement that was made by a top 3 team, the number 3 team in the AP poll last week, Tennessee just curb stomped Kentucky, 44-6, man. And Hendon Hooker, your boy, he's now the favorite. Tyson gave it out at plus 400 again. He rebounded into the market. He's now the favorite in the Heisman Trophy market here. He was 19 of 25 for 245, 3 touchdowns. He honestly didn't even have to do that much in this one. This was just a complete clinic.
I mean, I got in at 1,600. I got back in at 400. And I'm feeling pretty good, man, because this dude is special. And this is a team where it would have been really easy to kind of go into Kentucky with one eye on Georgia coming into this week. And all that they did was show up. And it was the defense for the first time really this season that Tennessee has been like, okay, Will Levis? I don't think so. And this is a guy that I love. I always have been a Will Levis guy. I'm starting to reconsider my stance on that as the season goes on. I've not been impressed with the jump, if he's even made one from sophomore year to here. But I was super impressed with Tennessee. They're different, man. They're starting to get that feeling.
And Josh Heupel can just flat out design an offense, man. The dude was elite at UCF. He comes in the SEC, elite defenses, right? He's fucking shredding them up like a hot knife through butter. He's got a big test next week, and we will preview that one. And we got to touch on this, though, Tyson. Michigan 29, they beat Michigan State. Ugly scene after the game as one of the Michigan players appeared to be jumped in the tunnel. And there's a whole, kind of thought process, debate, argument, whatever you want to call it, about Michigan having the same tunnel. Whatever it is, there's no excuse for that action. And I think 8 players total have been now suspended by Michigan State for their involvement in that brawl, in that jumping, whatever we want to use to describe what took place. There's just no excuse for any of that action. You may have a different angle on it in terms of like the coaching side of things there, but I mean, just as an overall discussion point there, I mean, I don't care, what happens on the football field, if you're rivals, whatnot. Once you're in that tunnel, I mean, there's no excuse for any violence of that kind.
I'm going to be as clear and concise as I can. Mel Tucker, you're a fucking clown. Michigan State, everybody in that locker room, you're a bunch of fucking clowns. That's the most chicken shit coward thing I think I've ever seen from a college football program. I mean, what the fuck, man? Like, you're swinging helmets. First of all, that's assault and battery, right? You got a deadly weapon in your hand. A poor kid just trying to get to the locker room. He might be chirping. You just got your shit rocked on the field by a rival. It's been a tough year. If you're a leader on that team and you're letting that happen as you're standing by, then you're not a leader. You don't have what it takes to be a leader. And I don't think there's one in that entire program. And you just gave somebody $95 million and he comes out and says, well, the players responsible are being suspended. You're responsible. You're responsible. You're the head coach. You're in charge. These guys are a reflection of you, of the university that just gave you and your family generational wealth, everything that you could ever imagine, off the back of a Kenneth Walker season. You didn't do that. You were gifted this dude in the transfer portal. He goes off. You turn that into $90 million. And then you have the gall to say we're taking care of it internally. The only way to take care of that internally is on the practice field, in the off season. Like, this isn't something that just happens. Like, it's not just they haven't been tested, they're jumping somebody 10-on-1 in the locker room. You're a loser. And you got a whole team full of losers, and nobody's calling this dude out. It's I can't believe this happened. It's college kids, and they have the same tunnel. Doesn't matter. And this is a weird example, but this was the first thing that popped in my head. If this happened to Jackson State, you know what would have happened to Deion Sanders? Right? If this, like, anywhere else, it's like, I can't believe this. When it's Mel Tucker, it's like, well, he won a couple games last year. I mean, it's Michigan State, it's whatever. It was a tough game. Fuck that.
Yeah, I mean, strong words, Tyson. I love it. I mean, It's a failure by the media, honestly, too, to not take. We're going to be now. Here's what I love too. There's always a double standard, right? You can't criticize the college kids. It needs to be a reflection of the adult in charge here. And then something like this happens, they're just blaming the kids. Now, I agree with you. This is a reflection on Mel Tucker and where this program's at and the actions. There is culpability for these players as
of
well.
course.
But I agree with you. I mean, you can't let it get to that point.
No, I mean, this was a complete institutional failure. And to me, this is about as close to with cause as you can get to firing somebody. We were talking about that yesterday. I know that it probably doesn't hold up in court, but what are the main jobs? Every college football coach in the country is going to get up in front of the media on the podium and say, "I'm here to raise young men. I want them to be good people first." That's everybody's line. You're lying. You lied and you failed at that. Own up to it.
All right, continuing to move along. I guess last kind of big game we have here. This was absolutely shocking to watch. Kansas State literally just pushed around, dominated Oklahoma State. They beat them 48-0 or 48-0 with their backup quarterback Will Howard, and Oklahoma State couldn't do anything.
This was one that was so bad. I was Googling while I was watching the game to see if I was missing injuries. It's like somebody somewhere had to get hurt. I don't have the TV on loud enough. I don't know what's going on. Just turns out that they were 48 points better on Saturday. And it was not a good showing for my Oklahoma State season-long tickets. It wasn't a good showing for my boy Mike Gundy. It was just an overall ass whooping. And you know what? I think that nobody in the country saw it coming, which was the best part about it.
Okay, let's move in. That's kind of like the big games, top 25 recap we want to do. Let's move into the first edition of the 2022 College Football Playoff Rankings. Number 1, the Tennessee Volunteers. Number 2, Ohio State Buckeyes. Number 3, the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 4, the Clemson Tigers. Number 5, Michigan Wolverines. And number 6, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I guess just first thoughts when you saw these come out.
It was weird. I mean, the order of I think Bama should probably be behind TCU. I don't think that truly can be up for debate at the moment. I mean, TCU's beaten 2 top 20 teams, which is more than Bama's done to this point in the season. But if Oregon's 8 and Georgia beat Oregon by 40 points and Ohio State beat 16 by 13, reasons – the thing with the college football playoff rankings is it's a TV ploy. They want to be able to say it's 6 versus 10 this week with LSU Alabama, but they missed a golden opportunity for a 1 versus 2 matchup here. It was right in front of them.
Yeah, I'm glad Tennessee was ranked number 1. Now I'm sure they're a little scared because now Georgia for the entire week just goes, oh, we're number 3, we're behind these guys. So that could be an angle we talk about in games we circled. But listen, Tennessee deserves to be ranked number 1 in the country for what they've done. I mean, they played absolutely fantastic all season long. They've looked like the most dominant team in college football. So I'm glad they got that there. And then the rest, in my opinion, it just basically feels like we're going off name and kind of preseason expectations, right? Okay, Ohio State, we talked about it a little bit. Nothing too impressive, but, we think they're going to be there in the end. We'll put them number 2. Okay, Georgia, national champs last year. They're still undefeated. We'll put them 3. I think deservedly they should be in there. Same with Ohio State. Now, Clemson, who have they played? Who have they beaten? But they're undefeated, and they're probably going to win the ACC. We'll put them at 4. But Michigan, now you have to beat Ohio State to be in there, although you've had good wins. Alabama, well, we just like you guys. So even though you have a loss and probably should have 2, we'll slot you in at 6, and we'll just keep you on the edge in the periphery just in case we can get that SEC championship. So it's classic. It's classic. It's nothing that I'm going to get up in arms about. Twitter is going to be going nuts about it. Social media, the group chats, the message boards, people will be up in arms. Here's the reality of it. Here's the truth. It's just something to keep the talking point going right now. We have so many games left, 4, which is a ton in college football because crazy shit happens every single week, that all this is going to be shifted around, and we'll even forget about this.
And most of these guys got to play each other. Tennessee, Georgia go this week. Bama, LSU go this week. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan are going to have to play each other. If I'm TCU, and that's what I've been seeing, everybody's super upset. This is perfect. All you got to do, if you win out, they ranked you high enough at this point that if you win out, you make the playoff. That's all you can ask for. So it's just funny watching everybody freak out because it's going to be so different by the time we get there. I will say that the way this slots right now, it's looking a little scary as far as they might find a way to put 3 SEC teams in this playoff, my friend.
Oh, that'd be their dream, wouldn't it? That would
Because
be their dream.
think about it though, if Georgia beats Tennessee barely, and then Bama blows out Georgia in the SEC championship game, or Bama beats them, Bama goes undefeated, wins the West, beats Georgia. Then we have one loss Tennessee, one loss Georgia, one loss Alabama. There's no way they're keeping those guys out in favor of a TCU, and that's the scary part.
Of course, and that's why I think we talk about the expansion. That could be another pod, for a later date as we kind of get closer to that. But I mean, we'll see where it all shakes up. Like it still work its way out. Let's move into the Week 10 big matchups here, Tyson, and let's just highlight some of the big ones here. Let's start with the big boy, and it's number 1 Tennessee facing number 3 Georgia. Tennessee's got to go on the road. I think Georgia's going to be hyped up for this matchup. They're going to be ready to roll. What do you expect style-wise? Like, can Tennessee continue to score points against a Georgia defense who's continued to be dominant? Now, Nolan Smith out for the year, a premier linebacker and edge rusher for Georgia. That's huge, in my opinion. But what are you expecting style-wise?
I just think that Tennessee is going to try their best to play Tennessee football, and that involves being faster than you and being smarter than you. And Georgia has relied on being faster and smarter than everybody else on defense. This, to me, is the best clash of styles that we'll have this year in the SEC. I am pumped for this game. And in college football in general, it's a speed versus speed thing. It's good versus good. I think Georgia's offense is going to be – I think they're better relatively than Tennessee's defense is as far as, like, comparing units go. So I think they have an advantage there. But it comes down to the best player in the country. And if this dude is going to keep this up, and it's been a couple of years since we've seen somebody go on one of these runs, man. But Hendon Hooker has something in him, and this team is believing right now. And the way they handled Kentucky made me really, really optimistic that they'll be able to go into Georgia and put up a close fight. But this is the reigning defending national champion who has not been knocked off. And frankly, the only people that have been close to knocking them off is like Missouri, right? It's been sleep games for these guys, and if they come out sleeping, Tennessee will knock them out in the first half. And I don't think Kirby's going to let them come out sleeping.
Other big matchups here, if you look through it. Now ranked teams are playing, and you could say, this is interesting, but we're talking about like the big matchups on the board here. And your LSU Tigers are hosting Alabama. LSU ranked 10th in the college football playoff. Alabama 6th, like we just mentioned. Listen, Alabama is gettable. I think LSU, they always get up for these games. I'm expecting a really good performance. I mean, Jalen Daniels, the last 3 weeks is night and day from his growth in this Brian Kelly offense to what he is now. We know LSU has athletes. They always have athletes. And they always have athletes can compete with Alabama's athletes. And that's why these games are always so close. I expect this to be a dogfight. Brian Kelly, he's chomping at the bit to finally be able to have the talent to be able to beat in Alabama. It's at 7 p.m. in Death Valley. That place is going to be fucking electric. Alabama better be ready to play, or else they could actually lose this football game.
And it would be a pretty monumental thing because LSU seems to only be able to beat Alabama in the regular season, at least in Alabama. Right, they have to go to Tuscaloosa to get the win. For some reason, Nick Saban, he left something in the dirt over there. I think in Death Valley when he left in 2006 or whatever it was, 2004, because he owns them in Death Valley, and this is Brian Kelly's first real opportunity. I mean, they're on board now. I tell you that much. But when they got blown out by Tennessee, it was like, I don't know about this guy. And then they go out, they beat Florida. We're back in, and then they dominate Ole Miss. They outscored them 45-3 or whatever it was over the last 3 quarters of their game 2 weeks ago. LSU coming off a bye. Bama obviously has a lot more to play for here. I think that LSU could win out and not make the playoff at this point, but this is a expectation thing for Alabama where it's a culture-setting thing for Brian Kelly, and that's what's going to be interesting. The key to the game will be, does Kayshon Boutte want to play football this week?
That's been the question, right? That's been the question surrounding that offense. I'm excited for that game, man. I mean, obviously, if LSU wins this one,
And by the way, B.J. Ojulari is breathing down everybody in the top 10's neck right now as far as NFL draft pick status goes. He wants a bag, man. He's playing like he's going to get one. If he chases down Bryce Young a couple times, I'm telling you, he's shooting up the boards.
Last true big matchup here. Number 24 Texas goes at Kansas State. Kansas State obviously off that big victory like we detailed. This is a big game. I mean, in the Big 12 overall. It looks like TCU's running away with it a bit. They got a tough schedule on the back end. So if they can drop a couple, I mean, Texas is going to be right there to come through. Texas has to get this win. This would be a program changer, I think, in a way. You know, they're sitting at 5-3. They had injuries to their star players. 3-2 in the Big 12. They win this one. They're looking at least to be climbing up the board. If they lose 3-3, I think they can win this football game. I think they actually will win this football game. I know that Will Howard looked great last week. I think maybe there's a little bit too much hype surrounding what Kansas State is right now. Texas had a bye last week, didn't play. And this could be a game where Texas is preparing for Kansas State and comes out and surprises them. And Quinn Ewers just throws it all over the football field.
Well, that's what I'm worried about as far as game script goes. Because if they come out with Quinn Ewers throwing the ball all over the field, then you're negating the biggest advantage that you have in Bijan Robinson. And I think that they have to get this guy involved early and often. And if they can do that, Texas will cruise because that's how good I think he is. Oklahoma State does not have a guy like this. Granted, they don't have a quarterback like Quinn Ewers or skill position players really like Texas. I know they're sitting there at 5-3, but it's been an interesting year. I'm more worried for big game Sark than I am for the way Texas could be perceived, whether they win or lose this game. This is huge for him. Here's your Tom Herman game, your Charlie Strong game. They would have lost these. You got to go out and win one.
Yep, absolutely. And you know that is definitely something to keep an eye on. And man, both those games going at 7 p.m. You got Clemson, Notre Dame at 7:30. Interesting slate, and then Wake Forest, NC State, 2-2 ACC teams, 21
which is such
22.
A bummer because if we had healthy quarterbacks, that would have been 100-98 to end the night. Would have been perfect.
I know. I that would have been an electric game. Yeah, unfortunately, Devin Leary's out for that one. But Tyson, let's move into games that we've circled for the betting window this week in week 10. I'll start here. I have, let's see here. I have 3 games that are already in the account that I've locked in. I think I'm about to lock in 4, potentially 5, depending on our conversation. But I'm going to start here. I have Kentucky minus 2.5 on the road against Missouri circled right now. Yes, they looked horrible. I mean, they look bad. Missouri comes off a big victory on the road. Are they feeling themselves a bit? Kentucky, they got to refocus here. This is Stoops off a loss. I like that angle. I don't think Kentucky's nearly as bad as they showed last week. And I don't think Missouri's nearly as good as they looked last week. So I like Kentucky with this short number under the field goal.
That's going to be a fun one. And that's going to be something where we learn a lot about where Kentucky's at as a program, because this is not one that you can let slip after getting embarrassed a week ago. One that I have circled that I'm not all the way in on a play yet. I'm wondering how this is going to go, but TCU minus 9.5 is interesting to me. They're at home against Texas Tech. This just comes out. This is classic bulletin board material. You can see how disrespected you were. You're undefeated, and they put you behind these guys? Are you kidding me? And Texas Tech's a good team. Texas Tech is a team that has upset people and surprised us a couple times, but they surprised us against teams that maybe we were overrating a bit in Texas, right? And so now I think TCU is like, you know, if I'm coaching, I'm like, we're only supposed to beat these guys by 9. Can you believe that? We're 3 touchdowns better than these guys.
Yeah, it's interesting because this could be a letdown spot, right? Crazy win over in West Virginia. You come back home, okay, it's Texas Tech, but with that added little motivation, you know, this could definitely be a game. That is an interesting angle there, Tyson. Another one for me, I got Florida plus 3.5. I've circled on the road against A&M. I mean, A&M's laying points to anybody in the SEC, really? Like, that's my only thought process there. I want to dig into that and see why that game is like that. I know the shine has come off Florida, but my God, that much?
How many games in a row in conference, especially, does Jimbo have to lose before that $85 million gets a little bit easier to swallow as A&M boosters? Like, if Anthony Richardson comes out and puts up 5 touchdowns on these dudes, I don't know if he's making it to the end of the year. I think they'll just pony up the money, man. There's a lot of ego over there in College Station.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, it's good for our wallets, though.
You know one that I am interested in, Brad? Tulane and Tulsa, 57.5. Which way you think you would go in this one? Because I might have a different opinion.
I don't know. I'll say that for money making time, but that's I have a bet in the account on that game actually.
I'm
Total wise, I'm not sure. I think I would lean over, but I don't know.
that's my official lean right now is the over as well. 57.5 is interesting because I think uh, this could be a game that I think Tulane could really get off on these guys. I just think that there's a way that they score 3 touchdowns early. I know they're on the road, but if they come out and silence these kids, then we have a really easy chance of hitting the over. The other part is it's still Tulane. It's still Tulsa. It's a middle of the day game. That's a weird number.
I already mentioned my lean Georgia -8.5 against Tennessee, just based on the motivation factor there. But here's one I'm thinking about locking in. I'm leaning this way right now. Illinois -16.5 at home against Michigan State. Michigan State's going to have 8 suspended players. Seems like that locker room's out of control. I mean, you would think maybe something like this would galvanize the locker room. I don't really know if that's the case in this situation. And Illinois might just come out and just push these guys around. I mean, we saw Michigan dominating the ground. Why can't Illinois do it?
Michigan State quit on the season 3 weeks ago. I don't see any reason why this isn't a 3-score game. I mean, it would galvanize the locker room if there were leaders in the locker room, but we just found out there's not. Illinois is good, and at a certain point, we're going to have to realize that you can physically dominate Michigan State to the point where the game's not even close. Like, this is going to be a time of possession thing where we might be looking at a 40-20 at the end of the day.
I think I'm going to move one of mine into the bet category here. Here's one. Navy plus 19.5. Now, they're on the road at Cincy. Cincy just coming off a heartbreaking loss against a heated rival in UCF. Cincy hasn't been tackling well this season. If you can't tackle Navy, you're in trouble. That's a lot of points for a team that's going to be churning the clock up. I like it here. I want to do a little bit more research. I might kind of wait to see if this thing rises a bit, but 19.5, I really like here. I don't know. I may just have to pull the trigger, but that's one I have circled at the moment.
And then my last lean here, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to move it into official before the week's over, is over 54.5 in the Kansas State-Texas game. This is a game that I think, just given the two teams that are playing, the stakes of the game, the level of the prospects in the game, this is going to be a 35-30 kind of deal in the third quarter. This is going to be a classic Big 12 shootout, and that's what I'm looking for, and I think that we have the guys to deliver it.
I got 4 more games I've circled here, Tyson, so I'll just run them through you real quick. I think I'm putting this in the account right now. Houston SMU over 66.5. That seems like that's going to go over. Houston gives up points. SMU can score them and give them up.
I love it. I think that's a good play.
Mississippi State -13.5 at home against Auburn. I'm worried about maybe the bump from Brian Harsin getting fired, but it just seems like that's a disaster over there. And Mississippi State needs to bounce back in the spot.
I mean, there's no way that Auburn gets worse. that's kind of my thoughts on the Brian Harsin losing his job deal.
Let's see here. Last 2 here. So Wake Forest -5.5 on the road to NC State. Did anybody watch them without Leary? They looked awful. And Wake Forest isn't going to turn the ball over 8 fucking times and a half in this one. This seems ludicrous to me. I might just have to lock this one in kind of prayer and send up a prayer. But Wake Forest -5.5. Why is that number in this spot?
A touchdown spread here feels a bit disrespectful.
And then last one here, Fresno State -24.5 at home against Hawaii. Jake Hayner's back. Hawaii coming back stateside. Feels like this could be a game that Fresno State's like, okay, Hayner, throw the ball around. Let's get right. Let's make a push late in this conference.
This is the classic. This is where the DJing behavior comes out because I don't know how many people are playing this game.
I know. I looked at it. I'm like 10:30 Eastern. I'll be up.
I love
All
it.
right. Let's move into money making time. Let's give out the official picks that we've already put in the account. Now, if you want all of our picks, now our leans could turn into official plays. You got to join our chalkboard. Link is in our description here. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, listening to us on Spotify or Apple, make sure to join that. I'm starting to heat up a little bit in the NBA and NHL. So I needed that after I start off horribly in the NBA. So let's get into it here, Tyson. I will extend it to you. Why don't you give me your first official play of Week 10 in college football?
I'm going to go with my first official play, and I think maybe the spiciest one that I have on the board right now. Under 65.5 in Tennessee, Georgia. This is a 130 1 versus 2 matchup. I don't care what the polls say. These are the two best teams in college football right now, in my opinion. I think that this is going to have a bit of a national championship vibe to it. I think this is going to have a bit of a playoff game vibe where Tennessee's might be a little tight and Georgia might be a little tight. And then eventually the floodgates will open. I just don't think they open quick enough to get to a like. Could this game is a 31-28 game all day long to me. I think people are looking at Bama and what they did versus Tennessee and expecting that to happen with this Georgia team. Georgia's way different animal than that Bama defense.
Mine is Tulsa plus 7.5 at home in the early slate. Listen, Tulane avoided the classic. You get into the top 25 and you lose the next week. I think it may come this week. That's a lot of points to be given on the road right now in a kind of a similar a rivalry game, which I think could potentially turn into a shootout. Listen, I'm going to take the hook here. Tulsa plus 7.5 is my first play here.
And I'm going to stay with those top 10 matchups. I'm going over 57.5 in the Bama LSU game. I don't think either one of these defenses are good enough to stop the other offense. And I wouldn't have said that 3 weeks ago, but I've been very impressed by what LSU's been able to do on the offensive side of the ball. And you might say, well, it was Ole Miss, it was Florida. Bama's defense isn't exactly something you need to gather around the TV and watch. This is not 2011. This isn't 2014, 2017, any of those years. This defense isn't very good. And LSU's athletic and fast, and they give problems on the edges, and that's the spot that Bama's been able to be exposed the most. Little worried about throwing down the field if I'm LSU, but I think Bama's going to be able to score too. And I think this is easily, I think we're going to see one of the higher scoring games in the history of this rivalry. Not quite a 2019 high level scoring game, but pretty close.
I'm going to take a gross one here. Temple plus 3.5 at home against South Florida. South Florida is really bad. Temple plays way better at home. They actually have a pretty good defense, although they got just shit on by UCF, gave up 70 points. But other than that, this is normally a pretty good defense, especially when playing at home. I think they're going to be able to score on a softer South Florida defense and be able to win this thing outright. So I'll take the points with the home dog here.
I got Oklahoma State minus 2.5 at Kansas. I think this is a bounce back spot for them because it can't get worse than it was a week ago. And I still think that even though they lost 48-0, this is a team that is top 20. I think in the country. I just think they had a bad day. I think a bad day at the office. They got embarrassed. Kansas isn't somebody that's going to do the things that Kansas State just did to Oklahoma State in order to expose them. I think this is a game that they can easily win by a field goal.
I got Memphis plus 3.5 at home. Yeah, they're at home against UCF, coming off that huge victory. John Reese Plumlee, quarterback for UCF, banged up. I don't know how effective he's going to be here. So I'm going to get on this early. This is already in the account. Memphis plus 3.5 at home with a team who can absolutely score on this defense, UCF. And if their quarterback's not right, I think Memphis can easily win this game. And if he's announced out, we're going to get some good CLV because I think Memphis will move to the favorite if Reese Plumlee isn't able to play in this one.
I'm hitting the Pac-12 after dark, my friend, and I'm going UCLA minus 10.5 at Arizona State. I think UCLA got a little overrated to start the year, and don't let the record fool you. Follow the money. I don't think people are all over UCLA the way that they were a couple of weeks ago. I think this is a team that they're easily 2 touchdowns better than.
Last official play for me here. I'm going to take Texas -2.5. I talked myself into it. If you think it's going to be a high-scoring game, then I like this shorter number here. If it was maybe a bigger number, I wouldn't like it as much. But I'll take my chances here with, I think, a better roster. Not sure if it's a better coach, but I know for a fact a better quarterback in Quinn Ewers, and they should have better players than what Kansas State has as well and be able to push them around, especially with Bijan Robinson. So I'm going to take Texas 2.5-point road favorites to beat Kansas State off their huge upset victory last week.
And I'm rocking with you. And that's my last official play as well. I just think Texas has too much. And I know that you might be able to look at what happened a week ago and be like, well, I don't know, you could say that. Just pay attention, because this is not a Texas team that has not lived up to the potential one time all year. I mean, the closest they've been was with a limping backup quarterback against Alabama. Quinn Ewers was bad the last time we saw him play football. He won't be that bad again. Kansas State was phenomenal the last time we saw them play football. They won't be that good again. I'm rocking with Bijan all day long.
Water finds its level at some point. I think we're kind of on the same track there. So that's going to do it for all our official plays as of now. Again, Chalkboard's going to have all of them for the weekend. I mean, we got Maction back. I mean, they're going off tonight. We got another game Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We got fucking football all week. So get in the Chalkboard so we can give out our picks. We didn't want to give you anything Wednesday or Thursday because we want you in that Chalkboard. We got plays.
Mel Tucker, stand up for yourself, brother.
Appreciate you guys listening as always. Like, subscribe, and share. Instagram @_the Roundtable Pod. Our TikTok blowing up a bit is the same. And our Twitter @TRT_pod. Interact with us on there. We appreciate the support. NFL coming out Friday. We are breaking down Thursday Night Football and giving you our Week 9 NFL picks. We will talk to you then. Until next time, guys. Peace.